Joining me this morning, the Parliamentary Secretary for Employment, Jason Clare, and the Shadow Immigration Minister, Scott Morrison. Gentlemen, good morning to you both.
G'day. Good morning.
Jason, what is it? Is it talks are proceeding well or they're not proceeding at all? The Prime Minister seems to believe that everything's going swimmingly. You listen to the industry, and it's the complete flip side to that.
Well, I guess it depends on who you're speaking to in the industry. We're seeing good progress. You broke a story on the show 2 weeks ago today where you made the point, and the Minerals Council made the point back to you, that we should be taxing mining profits based on the profit they make rather than the production they make. That was a really big concession by the mining industry to recognise that we should be taxing profits rather than production, and off the back of that you've had Peter Costello, John Hewson, Andrew Robb, a range of people say this is the way to go. The only person who isn't saying that we should tax profits is Tony Abbott. What we're talking to the mining industry about now, not just the Mining Council but individual companies, is about the detail about how that will work to make sure that the mining industry continues to grow, but at the same time, Australians get a fair share of the profits that they make.
The Prime Minister's message yesterday was thanked the caucus for holding their nerve. Was that as much a request as it was a statement? Please continue to hold your nerve, because 8 of the 10 questions or statements in the caucus related to the mining tax. It seems people are skittish.
No, I think it's the reverse, actually, Kieran. You know, what my colleagues were saying was, go ahead, Kevin, this is the right thing to do. People in the Labor caucus know that reform is hard. It's never easy. Have a think back 20 years to the reforms of the Hawke government, whether it's tariff reduction or whether it's superannuation or Medicare. These are hard things. Today we might think they were easy, but there were serious blues and serious fights back then. Have a think overseas. Look at Obama. He's just made big reforms to healthcare, but go back 6 months and they were very unpopular. People were burning him in effigy. What all of my colleagues were saying is that good Labor governments make big reforms that set us up for the future. But we've done it before and we'll do it again.
You talk about the rows, the stoushes. There apparently was one yesterday between Gary Gray, the member for Brand in WA, and Lindsay Tanner. Gary Gray was saying that there needs to be a deadline set, August, at the latest, for a resolution to this. Lindsay Tanner says there can't be an arbitrary deadline set. Apparently they had a stink in the caucus. So Gary Gray obviously doesn't agree with you that things are travelling as they should.
Kieran, I didn't see it. You know, if it was there, I didn't see it in the caucus. What everybody is saying is we want to deal with this as expeditiously as possible, but we've got to get it right. You can't take a cake out of the oven just because you're hungry. You've got to cook it. You've got to get it done. We've got to get the details sorted out to get the right package that, as I said before, will make sure that the mining industry continues to grow, but at the same time, Australians get their fair share of the profits that these companies make.
OK, well, for Tony Abbott, Scott Morrison, his message was the coalition needs to play a cautious, steady game, a straight and steady game. Essentially, it seems that he just doesn't want you to make any mistakes and to keep the focus on the mining tax.
Well, look, there's a good reason to focus on the mining tax. I mean, what we've seen with the mining tax, if this was a real reform, I thought Peter Walsh made this point quite well a few weeks ago. If this was a genuine reform, the Henry Review would have come out for everyone to see back in February. There would have been a long consultation process that went on and a debate about the Henry Tax Review, and including, you know, this measure, which isn't what was in the Henry Tax Review. What they've come up with is something different. But there would have been a long process of debate. There would have been genuine reform discussions taking place. What we've seen instead is a Prime Minister spring this on the Australian people, spring it on the mining sector, and just put it out there. And now he's going through this faux process of consultation. Now, if the people you're negotiating with don't think you're consulting, I don't think the Prime Minister can stand up and tell the Australian people that he's engaged in a consultation process. You know, it'll be the usual, just get out of the way, I want to do this. He said it on health to the premiers. Apparently the premiers were the problem. Now the mining industry is the problem. Well, there's a pattern here. This Prime Minister doesn't listen.
Well, Tony Abbott using the words steady and cautious. Has he had a makeover?
Look, what Tony is saying really clearly is that this government has major problems and the Australian people need to understand what those problems are, and they are understanding. They've woken up to Kevin Rudd, I think that's very clear. But what we're seeing with this mining tax, again, is this faux process of trying to pretend to be one thing but clearly being another. And I think that's exactly what we've seen from this Prime Minister from day one.
Tony Abbott led the charge in question time. Let's recap a little bit of the exchange with the Prime Minister.
When will he finally end this amateur hour experimentation with Australia's economic future and dump this bad tax?
We're engaged in consultation, we're engaged in negotiation, and we will prosecute that to the extent that it's necessary to reach an appropriate settlement for the national economic interest.
Scott Morrison, the message from Tony Abbott to your troops seems like a typical small target strategy, very different from the approach that he took in his Battle Lines book of those big ideas, big spending initiatives. This seems to be just keep your head under the parapet at the moment.
Well, we've announced a whole range of policies.